I'd like to talk about University of California before I share a message today. I know that a lot of parents would like to send their kids to one of the UCs, and some of the famous colleges or universities in UC systems are UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego, and UC Irvine. In order to get into universities in the United States, students need to take entrance exam, such as SAT or ACT. Students could take either one or both. I heard that SAT is more popular than ACT just by a little, and more people in the West Coast take SAT, and more people in the East Coast take ACT. But they're both valid, standardized college entrance exams. Now, there are controversies regarding these tests. First is cultural bias. Some people criticize SAT or ACT because it is too centered toward white people. So if you're students of such as Asian Americans or African Americans or Hispanics, they're saying that they have disadvantage because a lot of questions are centered around lifestyle of white people in the United States. Also, family with the high income have more advantage compared to family with low income because family with the high income are able to hire private tutors or even send them to SAT schools for their kids to be ready for SAT or ACT. So a lot of people talked about getting rid of the standardized test for many years. And surprisingly, about a week or 2 weeks ago, UC decided to suspend ACT and SAT until fall 2024. So a lot of parents are confused in terms of whether to prepare their kids for ACT or SAT. So I like to kind of look at the plan that UC came up with in terms of getting rid of ACT and SAT. So if the students are currently 10th and 11th graders, the UC plan is optional. So it says all students have the option of submitting ACT, SAT scores, and students will not be penalized in the admissions review process for not submitting ACT, SAT scores. Students will no longer be required to submit the SAT essay, ACT writing test. However, notice campuses may use test scores for admissions, scholarships, post-enrollment course placement, meaning that even though the UC might not use SAT or ACT scores in terms of accepting freshmen, they might use those scores as a placement test for whether to see whether students are ready to take certain courses. So I suggest if you're 10th or 11th, even though ACT and SAT are optional, I think it's better that you take those tests because they will use those test scores when they give out scholarships. And also, some campuses may use test scores for admissions. Now, if you're currently 8th or 9th graders, their plan is test blind, meaning that all California public independent high school students have the option to submit ACT/SAT scores, but those scores may not be used in making admissions decisions. Again, the campuses may use test scores for scholarships and post-enrollment course placement. Now, what if you're 7th and below? Well, if you're currently a 7th grader, UC is planning to come up with their own test. So if there is a new test by fall 2025, all California high school students submit scores from new test New tests made available to private, independent, and out-of-state schools, and so forth. And then campuses, some of the campuses they will use this new score for admissions, scholarship, and post-enrollment course placement. And the other scenario is, what if they don't have a new test ready by fall 2025? Then UC will eliminate altogether its standardized testing requirements for California freshman admissions. So as you can see, UC has plans to phase out the ACT and SAT and try to come up with their own test. Now, this is very burdensome if you're a current 7th and below, because remember, only UC decided to phase out or get rid of ACT and SAT scores. I don't know if other colleges will follow their footsteps. So if you are planning to apply to universities such as Stanford or USC or any other colleges outside of California, then these students have to not only study for SAT, ACT, but also the new tests that UC is going to come up with. So they have more tests, standardized tests to prepare for. Now, my question is this: if UC does not consider SAT or ACT when they accept freshmen, now what? What criteria are they going to use to accept new students? Well, I believe they've been using GPA, grade point average, along with SAT or ACT test scores when they accept new students. Now, in regular classes, A represents 4, B represents 3, C represents 2, and so forth, when they figure out grade point average, GPA. And in honors or AP classes, A is equal to 5 points, B is 4, and C is 3. The reason why you get higher point in AP and honors compared to regular is that those courses are more difficult. But then problem is this: GPA, unlike SAT, is very subjective. SAT and ACT are very objective because it's a standardized test, and all the students in the United States, or whoever takes the test, all take the similar test or same test. But GPA is not objective. This is what I mean. Depending on what high school you go to, your classes might be easier than other classes. So for example, the grade is determined by teachers. Some teachers give out easy A's, or some teachers give out hard A's. So students are difficult to get A's in certain classes. It all depends on teachers. So this is what I think is going to happen. I think the UC will look at whether the students took certain number of AP classes. Not only that, the AP classes alone are not enough. They're probably going to look at the scores. What score the students receive on the AP exam, which are given in May every year. Because AP exams are made by College Board, who makes SAT. So AP exams are standardized tests, meaning that all students take the similar tests with the similar difficulty levels. So I think the UCs will look more into, they're going to weigh more heavily on whether students took what number of AP exams and how many of those AP exams they passed. Also, the UC will continue to look at extracurricular activity, such as sports, club activity, or community involvement. So this is what I think is going to will happen eventually. So my suggestions are these. I think you should continue to prepare for SAT or ACT because, like I said, only UCs are planning to get rid of SAT or ACT. We don't know what other colleges are going to do. So I think it's better for students to continue to prepare for SAT and ACT. And also, preparation for SAT and ACT, it starts at a young age. You cannot just go to some SAT prep school when your kid is like 11th or 10th grade and you expect all of a sudden they get great improvement in their scores. At a young age, the three things that these kids need to work on are reading, writing, and math. Because these are basics, reading, writing, and math. You need to read many books in order to be a good writer or do well on essays. Without reading, there's no way one could be a good writer. And by doing well in reading and writing, students could be successful in classes such as English and history, those literature classes. And math is important. And when the kids study math, they need to focus on why instead of memorizing certain steps. So for example, instead of memorizing 2 times 3 is 6, it's better to know that the kids understand why 2 times 3 is 6. And as the students get older, they need to be able to explain how they got the answer, because the process of getting the answer is more important. They need to be able to explain their steps. Now, I have a question for you. Does just because your kids go to good university, does that imply they will be successful? As a high school teacher, I've experienced many students, different type of students. In LAUSD, we have 3 ways of giving grades. First part is letter grade. That's where the students get A, B, C, D, or F. Second part is the work habit. Work habit is we grade the students based on their number of tardies, absences, or whether they turn in the assignments on time, or number of missing homework assignments. So if the student gets E, that's excellent. If they get S, that's satisfactory. If it's U, then it's unsatisfactory. And we also have a cooperation that grades evaluates whether students are able to get along with their classmates, whether they being respectful to their teachers. So we have letter grade, work habit, and cooperation. Unfortunately, the colleges only see the letter grade because it counts towards their GPA. Colleges do not see work habit and cooperation grade. But as a teacher, I think there's more value in work habit and cooperation. Just because student gets A, it doesn't mean that they're ready to go into society and become a successful person. This is what I mean. I've seen a student, he was a smart student, and he got A. But in terms of turning in work, yes, it was excellent. He always turned in the work on time and did his best. But in terms of cooperation, that student did not know how to get along with other people. And he did not know how to really respect the teachers. Yes, that student got into a good university. But I really wonder whether that student is going to be successful when he goes into a society. He might continue to get good grades in college, but then what? How is he going to survive of getting along with other people? We cannot just tell our kids or students to just get good grade at school. There has to be a balance. Let's look at Luke chapter 2, verses 52. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature, and in favor with God and men. There are a few verses that explain about childhood of Jesus. And Luke chapter 2, verse 52 is one of the few. And it says that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. We have to notice 4 things here. First word is wisdom. Second is stature. Third, God. And fourth, man. When Jesus grew, there was a balance. He was well balanced. he grew up in wisdom, meaning that he grew up intellectually. And when he grew, he also grew in stature. He grew physically. So both intellectually and physically, there was a growth. And also, not only that, his relationship with God also grew. And his relationship with man also grew. So spiritually, he grew. And relationship-wise, he also grew. So we could learn from Jesus' life that it's important for our kids and students that they grow in these four areas as they grow up. But a lot of parents, I think, focus on the wisdom, the intellectual part, because for them, getting the kids into college is so important. Let's look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. It says, "Fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in training and instruction of the Lord." Do not exasperate or do not provoke your children. In Greek, the exasperate means parorgizo. Parorgizo means you make somebody really upset, extremely upset. Now, when do you think your kids are really upset? I think our kids are really upset when you make unreasonable demand, such as, how come you didn't get straight A's? My friend's son or daughter got straight A's with taking 5 APs. And you only have 2 AP classes and you cannot even get straight A's? That's awful. Is that all you can do? When you put down your kids like that, and when you compare your kids with other kids, I think that you are really provoking your children. You're probably killing them inside, killing their self-esteem. As a teacher, I don't expect my students get A's because I know their level, where they are. Not all students are really good with math. So some students have to work extremely harder than the others, even in order to get B in the class. So as long as they give their best, they try their best, and that's good enough. And what kind of expectation do we have for our kids? Yes, we want all our kids to do well and be successful. But we really need to think about whether we are exasperating our children in the process. This verse says that instead, we need to bring them up in training and instruction. Now remember, a lot of parents think that their kids are theirs. But if you think about it, right? God allowed you to have kids. If you really think about it, then they're not really your kids. They're God's children. We are here just to help them so that they could grow to be godly men and godly women. And that's a job of parents. So we're like coach. We need to train the kids. We need to give them right instruction. We need to guide them into following the Lord's way. And that's a parent's responsibility. It is a huge responsibility, as a matter of fact. Don't forget to compliment your children. They need to receive a lot of praises. Somebody told me that before you give somebody advice, you need to give at least 3 compliments prior to that. So remember, getting to good college is good. It's wonderful. They have a chance to get good jobs and make something with their life. Getting to good college is good. But I don't think that's everything. The job of parents is to help their children so that they could find out God's will. The children will understand what God's will is and that God's plan may be accomplished. Remember, God has a wonderful plan, not only for your life, but God has a wonderful plan for your children as well, for each one of them. He has a specific and detailed plans. And as a parent, we need to guide them and coach them so that they will be what God wants them to be. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next time.